Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. The state of Arizona has certified the controversial gubernatorial race between Republican Kari Lake and Democrat Katie Hobbs. How Lake is responding. A Georgia poll worker says both she and her teenage son were asked to leave the polling station before voting began on November 8th. What's the reason? We hear her story and what the election official says. A mysterious laptop, business dealings in Ukraine, and the 2020 election. We take a look at the latest information that's come out about the so-called Twitter files. The effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccines is under scrutiny. Data from the CDC shows that the vaccinated make up the majority of COVID-19 deaths in the country. And we take a look at the latest animated Disney film, Strange World. Why did it flop? And what would it take to give the company a much-needed break? We start the evening with an update on the 2022 midterms. The state of Arizona certified the election results today, and Republican candidate Kari Lake is responding.
Arizona's Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, Governor Doug Ducey, and other officials on Monday certified the state's vote canvass. This officially declares Hobbs, a Democrat, the winner in the race for governor.
And I just want to once again thank the voters of Arizona. Because of your participation, our democratic institutions thrived. Stay engaged and keep voting.
Election officials acknowledged there were mishaps in the November election, but said no one was disenfranchised. Hobbs, meanwhile, said, quote, Arizona had a successful election. The certification triggers recounts in 3 close races for Attorney General, State Superintendent, and a state House seat. Republican candidates, including Kari Lake, who ran for governor, and Abe Hamadeh, who ran for Attorney General, have said they will sue. They had to wait for the certification before they could formally challenge the results in court. And state law says they have 5 days to do so. Here's Lake speaking on the War Room with Steve Bannon on Monday morning.
We're ready to go with what we believe to be an exceptional lawsuit, and we believe we will be victorious in that lawsuit. And we'll take it all the way to the Supreme Court if we have to. We will not stop fighting because the people of Arizona were disenfranchised.
The candidates say machines malfunctioning in Maricopa County on Election Day led to voters being disenfranchised. Lake is also saying Twitter is disabling some functions of her account. Some of her tweets cannot be liked, shared, or retweeted. She's asking Elon Musk why. And now turning our attention to Georgia. The Senate runoff between Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock and Republican challenger Herschel Walker takes place Tuesday. Early voting ended last Friday, and over 1.8 million people have already voted. Georgia voters also broke the record for the largest single-day early voting turnout. The result of the runoff will decide whether Democrats can expand on their 50-50 majority in the Senate. Reporting by Allison Lee, NTD News.
A Georgia mom says she was fired from her poll worker job because of her conservative political beliefs. NTD's Arlene Richards has that story.
At 6:45 approximately, the poll manager came up to me and he was rather nervous, and he said to me, "You need to leave immediately." And then he said, "And so does your son."
A mother-son bonding event turned into an ordeal that Georgia mom Laura Cronin is still processing. Cronin and her 17-year-old son volunteered to serve as poll workers for the 2022 midterm elections. She said it was supposed to be a learning experience for her homeschooled son. The manager told her an election official wanted her to leave.
Nadine Williams, who is the interim director of elections, and she said to him, she posted something on Twitter this morning, and that's why she has to leave.
What do you think is the reason for this?
In my opinion, they don't want conservatives to be a part of these elections. They want to keep them as far away as possible.
Cronin did make a post that morning before she entered the facility.
All I said was, "Good morning. My son and I are just arrived at our polling location in Fulton County to help ensure a free and fair election. So what's wrong with that?"
She said something odd happened during a Zoom meeting 2 days before the election.
There was a lot of chanting. Everyone seemed to know each other.
Cronin recorded the rally and said she also heard this.
"We're going to make history on Tuesday." They also said they can't stop us now, and we're taking it to the wall, and this is our final push. So I wrote in the chat box of the Zoom call saying, "What kind of history are we making in Georgia?"
Cronin said Williams' response was this.
The history that we're making is voter turnout. Just so you know, someone wrote it in the chat box, and I'm telling you, it's voter turnout.
WSB-TV2 posted a statement from Fulton County officials in a November 8 report. The officials stated that a poll worker contacted Fulton County Registration and Elections to raise concerns about comments made by another poll worker during a virtual poll worker event. Cronin doesn't believe a poll worker raised concern.
So it was Nadine Williams. They gave a whole story to the press that someone of my peers was concerned about something on a poll, pep rally poll thing, and then it was brought to her attention and all that. Those were all lies. It was her that sought me out because my son and I clearly were not one of them.
The elections office also said in the statement that the Secretary of State contacted them with additional concerns. But according to a November 30 Epoch Times report, a spokesperson for the Secretary of State's office told the news outlet concerns were expressed by Fulton County, not by our office. NTD reached out to Williams and asked for more information on why Cronin had to leave the polling place. We're still waiting for an answer. Arlene Richards, NTD News, New York.
Turning now to an update on the Twitter files. First released by Twitter CEO Elon Musk and journalist Matt Taibbi, the series of documents show the workings behind Twitter executives suppressing the New York Post's Hunter Biden laptop story.
Former President Trump responded to the Twitter files that were released last week. They indicated that the Biden team, allegedly working with Twitter to censor posts, influenced the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. Trump asked on Truth Social, "Do you throw the presidential election results of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner, or do you have a new election?" A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Our great founders did not want and would not condone false and fraudulent elections. The White House responded to Trump's remarks about the Constitution, reportedly issuing a statement saying, "The American Constitution is a sacrosanct document that for over 200 years has guaranteed that freedom and the rule of law prevail in our great country. The Constitution brings the American people together regardless of party, and elected leaders swear to uphold it." Musk also responded to Trump's statement, saying the Constitution is greater than any president. End of story. Trump later clarified his statement, saying he was not calling to terminate the Constitution. Instead, he meant if fraud is involved in an election, there should be no time limit for change. The files published by Musk and Taibbi show how Twitter suppressed a story from the New York Post about Hunter Biden's laptop. The laptop reportedly contained information about the Biden family's business dealings in Ukraine, pictures of the president's son smoking crack cocaine, and sexually explicit images. The released files show the Biden team contacting Twitter ahead of the election to allegedly instruct on what posts to censor on Twitter. On Sunday, Musk was asked if he considers this to be election interference, to which he replied that this is the very definition of election interference. We reached out to the White House for comment, but didn't hear back before broadcast. Musk said a second episode of the Twitter files would be released soon. Reporting by Erin Pazdar, NTD News.
Does the COVID-19 vaccine actually prevent severe illness and death, as health authorities say? New data from the CDC shows that vaccinated people now make up the majority of COVID-19 deaths.
Data from the CDC showed that vaccinated and boosted people made up most of the COVID-19 deaths in August. There were a total of 6,512 COVID-19 deaths recorded in August this year, and 58.6% of them were attributed to vaccinated or boosted people. Vaccinated people appear to account for increasing numbers of COVID deaths over the course of the year. Back in January, vaccinated and boosted individuals made up just 41% of the COVID deaths. But by April, CDC data shows that vaccinated people made up over half the deaths, and that they continued to make up over 50% in the following months. Cynthia Cox, the vice president of the Kaiser Family Foundation, told the Washington Post, "We can no longer say this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated." Cox said she believes 3 reasons may explain why the vaccinated are now making up the majority of COVID deaths. 1 is that the majority of Americans have been vaccinated. 2 is that the elderly, who have the greatest risk of dying from COVID, are also more likely to get vaccinated. And 3 is that the potency of the vaccine will wane over time. Internist and cardiologist Dr. Peter McCullough also reacted to the data. He told the Epoch Times, "It certainly can't be a situation where we blame the unvaccinated for COVID deaths. And we certainly wouldn't conclude that the vaccines made any impact on us, as the majority of deaths happened during the era of vaccinations." In 2021, when vaccines were being rolled out, there were more than 463,000 COVID-19 deaths. By June of 2021, around half of the U.S. population had received their first dose, and 44% were fully vaccinated. But there was little difference in COVID-19 deaths between the first half of 2021 and the second half. Reporting by Allison Lee, NTD News.
And turning to Disney, reviewers are asking why the animated kids film Strange World flopped at the box office over the holiday weekend. Is it the content, promotions, or lack thereof, or something else? I spoke about that and more with A.J. Rice, the author of a recently released book called The Walking Dead. A.J. Rice, welcome to our show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Fantastic being here. Really great to see you, talk to this audience.
Now, Disney's Strange World tanked at the box office. It has the company's first main character to be cast as openly gay. Some say the movie's just not very entertaining. Others say it forgot its audience. What's your take?
Absolutely. I mean, Strange World had a strange audience. Didn't exist. So, look, the old CEO of Disney was just removed, Bob Chapek. And he's been making some weird decisions since the former CEO, gone in the past and now back, Robert Iger, has returned, I guess, with the fire trucks, right, to put the burning building out. Strange World, they were promoting it as, having the same-sex, I guess a gay character or a lesbian character. But this isn't the first time they've tried this. Earlier this year, they put out their last flop, which was Lightyear, which was sort of a spin-off of the Toy Story Buzz Lightyear movie, right? First thing they did was they removed Tim Allen as the voice of Buzz Lightyear. Now, I would question why. Perhaps it's Tim Allen's political views when he's not playing Buzz Lightyear. I don't know. But they replaced him with a known liberal, the gentleman who plays Captain America in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Chris Evans. And in that movie, there was apparently a lesbian kiss scene that was removed because it didn't poll well with the audience or focus group well. And then a bunch of sort of woke, crazy people at Disney went nuts and they put it back in. So Strange World, their newest flop, this is two animated movies that are supposedly for children in a row where they're basically trying to slow pump this sort of gender identity, gay politics, same-sex couples into what is supposed to be children's programming. So I guess the board at Disney had enough because the guy has also done some other crazy stuff that was removed, Bob Chapek, like getting into a legal fight with Scarlett Johansson, with Emma Stone over their contracts. I mean, he was not running this company culturally well. He was not running it financially well. You have to always ask yourself a question if you're going to be the head of Disney. What would Walt Disney do? And I guess what we have found out here is he wouldn't do any of this behavior, like picking a fight with Ron DeSantis and losing your tax-exempt status at the theme park in Orlando. All of these things come to a head, so he's out. And, I'd say good, because Disney needs to get back to what it does great, and that's great storytelling and bringing sort of the magic of Disney to families, because that is the core audience.
Disney's reinstated CEO Bob Iger was filmed in video clips shared by Chris Rufo, saying that while Disney still pushes a pro-LGBT inclusion message, it has to strike a delicate balance now and also listen to its audience. Do you think this signals much of a change in policy?
Well, I've said for some time, and, I'm on this book tour, the book's called The Walking Dead, that wokeism is inside Disney. It's inside the NBA. It's inside Coca-Cola. It's inside Levi's jeans. I've always been my take on it's always been that they're willing to lose, me, you, the audience of this network, because they can replace us with 1.3 billion Chinese viewers. So whether it's LeBron pushing Space Jam in China, whether it's, the Mulan movie, which was, a Disney movie which kind of turned into a sort of a propaganda movie for the CCP. I mean, they seem to be making their business decisions like, well, I don't care if Omaha doesn't watch. I don't care if Des Moines doesn't watch. I don't care if, Asheville, North Carolina doesn't watch, because I've got these other customers over here. Iger is a sensible businessman. Now, is Iger voting the same way as Rice? No. But Iger, realizes he must have some kind of nostalgia in his body, some kind of sentimentality of Walt Disney's legacy to say, whoa, let's pump the brakes here. He also, might I add, saw that resounding defeat of liberalism that DeSantis just had in Florida. Yeah, he's won some elections, but he's also winning the culture war, and that plays huge nationwide. I mean, I think Iger is there to look at spending. He's there to look at culture. He's there to stop some stupid decisions that were in the pipeline from happening. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I look, you put good entertaining products out there, people will watch. And look, we just have to, as Americans, as consumers, be smart and make decisions that are best for your value system.
And we are seeing a pushback. During the midterms, for example, there was a wave of conservative school board candidates elected. Do you think parents' increasing rejection of wokeism will have broader implications in the culture? Absolutely. I mean, you saw it even a year ago in Virginia with Glenn Youngkin. I mean, you had basically the true insurrection, which is the insurrection of parents. Parents have had it. You sent them all home because of COVID. You sent the kids home. The parents are looking at the textbooks now. They're looking at the Zoom meetings, and they're going, whoa, the founding fathers weren't, this or that. I mean, because that's what they're pushing here. This was never just about tearing down statues. It's about making sure that they have foot soldiers in the future by capturing the youth in this sort of authoritarian woke dress rehearsal so that, by the time they go to college and they come home for Thanksgiving break, they hate their parents. I hate to say that, but I mean, it's true. I mean, that's what they're doing here. They don't want anyone to grow up, and they're pumping this stuff, into the youth. You got to feel bad for Gen Z, the whole generation born with a smartphone in their hand. They have very little identity of their own, and yet they've got all these mixed messages coming in about their country, about their own gender, about whether their parents or their president, is a racist. I mean, it's really crazy, and we just have to be vigilant and keep an eye on the culture. All right, wise words. A.J. Rice, author of The Woking Dead. Thank you so much for your time. Great being here. Thank you. And coming up at the World Cup, the U.S. is out after losing to the Netherlands. But with one of the youngest rosters in play, what could their team look like in 2026? NTD's Dave Martin looks ahead. That and more after this short break. And now over to sports news. Here's NTD's Dave Martin with today's top stories.
Thank you, Steph. The U.S. was eliminated by the Netherlands Saturday at the World Cup, but that wasn't altogether surprising. The team has just one all-time win in the knockout rounds, and once this team fell behind by a pair of first-half goals, it spelled disaster.
That second goal right before the stroke of halftime, that was a killer. That was an absolute backbreaker. I just didn't see any kind of way going back after that. I bet a lot of America kind of gave up and turned the game off on that.
Paul Banks, who wrote Transatlantic Passage, which details how the English Premier League became popular in America, saw a constant problem with this year's team.
Their star players were, although not injured, not entirely match fit, like not 90 minutes match fit, and that really shows up in the second half.
Banks was referring to nagging injuries for Weston McKennie and Josh Sargent. But even with those healthy, he sees a bigger hole that the team will have to address if they're going to go farther in 4 years.
They don't have a true center forward. And we saw, Jesus Ferreira get the start today. He hadn't played a minute in the group stage. Greg Berhalter 3 times has altered, he's gone with 3 different starting center forwards because he doesn't have an answer.
But ultimately, Banks points to the fact that the U.S. fielded the second youngest team in Qatar and one that was not reliant on MLS players as positives for the future. He also points to our strong midfield play, tough defense, and young stars like Christian Pulisic as signs for a better run in 2026. Yet questions remain about this year's team.
I'd like to find out what's really going on with Gio Reyna. If that, why? Is he really hurt? Is he not hurt? I don't know.
Reyna made just one appearance in Qatar as a sub against England as whispers remained about his health. Ultimately, that comes down to the coach to answer, Greg Berhalter, who Banks couldn't really find fault with.
If he's legitimately hurt and that's why he's not on there, then I can't really complain too much about the decisions that Berhalter made. I think he did go with the best lineup he had.
While the knockout round continues in Qatar, the U.S.'s next match will be in 2026 when America hosts the World Cup. And for your sports viewing schedule this evening, the NBA has an 8-game schedule featuring a rematch of last year's Western Conference semifinals between the Phoenix Suns and Dallas Mavericks. And in hockey, the NHL has 6 games on tap for tonight, including a matchup between 2 of the best records in the league as the Boston Bruins host the Vegas Golden Knights. And finally, for you NFL fans, Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers take on the New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football. And that's it for sports. Back to you, Steph.
Thanks, Dave. And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.